Good morning, I'm Angelo Castro III.
I'm Angela, and
We bring you the news.
and the views that make
Sometimes
you
you agree.
think. Sometimes we don't.
This is News and Views.
And here are today's headlines.
Some provincial buses have already increased fares following the surge in fuel prices.
As fuel costs rise, concerns are also possible increases in the prices of basic commodities.
Malacanang assures the public that flood control investigations will continue despite the closure of the Independent Commission for Infrastructure.
The House of Representatives is expected to approve a measure this week granting President Bongbong Marcos the authority to temporarily suspend or reduce excise taxes on petroleum products.
First in the news, rising fuel prices are now starting to hit commuters and transport workers hard, with some provincial buses already increasing fares and drivers saying their daily earnings are shrinking. Here's the report.
The pocket-draining surge in fuel prices is creating a domino effect. Some provincial buses have already increased fares, a burden that will ultimately be carried by passengers, like Alan, who is traveling back to Legazpi Albay. He was shocked when his fare suddenly went up by 100 pesos in just one day.
Kahapon 1.2, dating 1.1, wag 1.2. Tapos ngayon naman 1.3 na siya agad. Sa ano daw po kasi sa yung crudo tumaas bigla.
Just like Alan, passenger Ellen could only react with an oh my gosh moment. She travels from Lipa, Batangas twice a week for her cleaning service job in Ortigas. Her fare, once 188 pesos, is now 216 pesos.
Halimbawa, bibigyan lang ako ng 800, syempre, yung pamasahe ko po. Tapos yun, buti na lang may konsiderasyon yung yung amo ko. So yun naman, nabibigyan naman niya ako ng, dinadagdagan niya yung pamasahe ko.
Based on the fare guide released by the LTFRB, provincial public buses may charge an additional 35 centavos to 1 peso per kilometer depending on the bus classification. Meanwhile, the 2 peso fare hike request from jeepney drivers and operators is still being studied by the agency.
Nasa LTFRB po ngayon, we give it back to them. Aralin niya mabuti yung numero kasi we have to hit a certain target pagdating sa sinasabi nating inflation. Kasi ang pagtataas parati po ng pamasahe, ang kakibat mo yan kaagad is pagtataas ng presyo ng bilihin, ng serbisyo.
Some taxi drivers, meanwhile, say they may reduce their trips to every other day to save on fuel.
Ang gagawin, every other day yung biyayang iba, o ang iba naman, hindi man siya tigil pasada, kundi nagano sila, hinahinig sa pasada. Lalo sa pag walang pasero, hihinto.
Many of them say even the strategy of turning off the engine while waiting in line to save fuel is becoming difficult.
Papatay yung makina, maghihintay sa pila-pila, hindi alis na walang laman. Mainit talaga, mainit. Kasi lalo na ngayon sa amin. Okay lang kung December malamig. Ngayon sa amin, kahit gabi, mainit.
Because of the continuing surge in gasoline and petroleum prices, many motorists are becoming more meticulous in searching for cheaper gas stations as part of their efforts to save money, especially amid fears of another possible fuel price increase this week. It is noticeable that fuel prices vary from one station to another, but there is no doubt that prices across the board have significantly increased. At 2 Petron branches we passed, there was about a 1 peso difference in prices. Diesel prices ranged from around 81 pesos to 82 pesos and 80 centavos per liter. At other major gas stations, diesel is priced at around 87 pesos and 40 centavos, while gasoline sells for about 77 pesos per liter. At Uni Oil, diesel costs around 82 pesos per liter. Gasoline, meanwhile, ranges from 69 to 72 pesos per liter. But according to industry sources, petroleum products may increase again by around 20 to 22 pesos per liter for diesel and 12 to 16 pesos per liter for gasoline.
The Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, will start distributing cash aid to tricycle drivers in Metro Manila on Tuesday, March 17. About 139,000 drivers are set to benefit from the initial rollout funded through the agency's Assistance to Individual bikes program. DSWD Assistant Secretary Irene Dumlao said the drivers are considered individuals in economic crisis due to rising fuel prices. Following the tricycle payouts, the government will provide the same 5,000 peso aid to jeepney, taxi, and TNVS drivers.
Let's take a look at the prices of everyday goods amid ongoing price hikes. Mobile journalist Fatima Baduria is reporting live from Balintawak Market. Fatima, go ahead.
Angela Diego, nagsimula ng magtaas ang presyo ng ilang bilihin dito sa Balintawak Market. Nagmahal na rin daw kasi ang singil ng mga nagde-deliver sa kanila ng pangbenta. Ang bigas nga, nasa 48 to 60 pesos ang isang kilo. Ang mais, tulad nito nga nasa tabi ko, no? 50 ang isang balot niyan. Ang itlog naman, nasa 100 to 120 ang isang dosena. Ang karne ng baboy, 280 ngayon na dati 265 pesos lang daw nilang nabebenta. Ang manok naman, 155 per kilo. At ang karne ng baka ay nasa 480 per kilo ang laman. Kahit nagmahal ang kuha nila, ay hindi raw nila mataasan dahil sa takot na baka hindi naman mabenta. At ganun din daw, no, ang mga gulay na tulad dito, no, merong mga gulay dito, no. Ang bawang at sibuyas nasa 25 ang half kilo, ang kamatis naman nasa 20 to 25 per kilo, ang repolyo nasa 20 pesos ang isang piraso. Tulad nito, nagmura na raw yan, no? At ang patatas naman nasa 30 ang half kilo ng nakita natin kanina. Meron ding mga prutas na ang mangga 80 to 100 per kilo, ang orange naman 80 to 120 per kilo, at ang mansanas ay 25 pesos ang isa. Ayon pa sa mga nakausap kong nagtitinda, nagmahal daw ang presyo ng isda dahil yung mga mangingisda ay nagmahal na rin yung gasolina, kaya hindi na sila masyadong makapaglayag, no, makapaghuli ng isda, at nababawasan daw yung mga nakukuha nilang isda, at nagmamahal din yung bigayan dito, yung mga nagbababa dito ng mga isda, no. Ang presyo ngayon ng bangus nga mula sa 130 noong nakaraang linggo ay tumaas na daw ng 160 ngayon. Ang galunggong naman tulad nito, ayan, ang galunggong ay nasa 200 ang isang kilo ngayon, na dati daw ay nabebenta nila ng nasa 180 lang. Ang tilapia ay 100 ang isang tumpok, ang tulingan 50 per half kilo, ang tawilis naman 50 rin ang per kilo naman, at ang sipon katulad dito, ayan, ay nabebenta raw nila ng 460 to 560 per kilo. Depende na raw yan sa laki. At kanina nakausap din natin, no, yung mga jeepney drivers. Ang ilang jeepney drivers dito malapit sa may Balintawak Market, ayon sa kanila ay kahit taas presyo ang gasolina ay pareho pa rin naman daw yung singil nila, no? Hindi sila basta-basta makapagtaas. Kaya yung bumabiyahe dito, no, mula Balintawak hanggang Crispo ay 13 pesos pa rin daw yung pamasahe, dahil nga hindi sila makapagtaas pa rin ng singil. At sa ngayon ay wala raw silang magagawa, pero tuloy pasada pa rin naman daw sila. Angela?
Fatima, kamusta naman ang bentahan ngayon dyan sa Balintawak Market kung ikukumpara doon sa mga nakaraang araw na hindi pa masyado apektado tayo ng pagtaas ng mga produktong petrolyo?
Ayun nga, Angela, no, nagsimula daw talagang tumaas dahil mas mahal din yung bigayan sa kanila, yung mga nagbababa sa kanila ng pangbenta nila. Nagtaas din daw, no? Kaya nga tulad ng nabanggit ko, yung bangus ay nagmahal na rin, na dati nabebenta raw nila ng 130, ngayon 160 na raw ang bentahan, at ganun din yung iba. Pero yung iba't katulad ng gulay na mabilis masira, kahit nagmahal daw yung bigay sa kanila, ay hindi nila mataasan yung presyo ng basta-basta dahil hindi rin naman daw mabibili at masasayang lang din daw at baka masira. Angela?
I meant kung marami bang namimili ngayon dyan ngayon?
Yes, Angela, kanina ay marami-rami, pero ngayon ay medyo nabawasan na dahil nga medyo anong oras na rin, no? 10 a.m. na rin, pero kanina ay mas marami pa, at pati nga yung mga nagtitinda ay nabawasan na rin.
Alright, maraming salamat sa iyong update, mobile journalist Fatima Baduria.
Vice President Sara Duterte has until today to respond to the impeachment complaints filed against her. Bicol Saro Party List Representative Terry Ridon says the process may move faster if the Vice President fails to submit an answer before the deadline. The House Committee on Justice will wait until the close of office hours before deciding on the next step. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives is expected to approve this week a measure allowing President Bongbong Marcos to temporarily suspend or reduce excise taxes on petroleum products to help ease the impact of rising fuel prices.
Let's now head over to the House of Representatives. For the latest, we have Mobile Journal Amy Atienza reporting live on the ground. Amy, ano ba yung mga priorities ngayon ng House of Representatives?
Angela, marami pa nga tayo inaabangan dito, lalo na this week dahil nga pupunta na sa session break itong House of Representatives by March 18. So expected yung katulad na nga nasabi kanina yung sa excise tax kung saan sinasabi na kinakailangan nga na maipasa na ito, lalo na dahil makikita natin yung prices ng petroleum products umaabot na yan sa around 90 to 100 pesos din per liter. So yung pagbabawas, yung possible suspension din ito, pagbibigay ng powers kay Pangulong Bongbong Marcos nga na masuspend or ma-reduce itong excise taxes, makatutulong daw yan para mabawasan kahit papano yung presyo ng produktong petrolyo. Bukod pa dyan, syempre inaabangan din natin yung mga mangyayari pa sa impeachment naman ni Vice President Sara Duterte dahil nga na-declare na itong sufficient in form and in substance ng House Justice Committee. Syempre inaasahan na yung mga next steps dyan. So today daw yung expected na deadline for this for the notice or for the response of VP Sara, dahil nga nagpadala sila ng notice. Ang sabi dito, technically dapat kahapon pero dahil Sunday nga, ay today na nila binigay yung last day for the deadline of this response from VP Sara nga. Bukod pa dyan, sa March 18, magkakaroon ang House Justice Committee ng panibagong hearing para nga mapag-usapan din yung final grounds and probable causes of this impeachment case of VP Sara. Dahil kung babalikan lang din naman natin kung ano nga ba yung nakapaloob doon sa dalawang natirang impeachment complaints, nandoon kasi halos same lang din naman yung laman. Meron lang ibang specifications katulad ng mga video doon sa bribery, pag-amin ng DepEd employee sa bribery na natatanggap nila kay VP Sara. So yun, halos same naman sa confidential funds pa rin, pati yung sa grave threat to high-rank officials, pati na rin yung testimony nga ni Ramil Madriaga ay nandoon. At yun na nga rin, kung marami nagtatanong, kung curious nga, kung ano nga ba ang mangyayari dito kay Ramil Madriaga, sinisigurado naman daw ng Kamara na mabibigyan sana sila ng protection. At yun nga din nakita natin sa statement ni VP Sara na dapat daw, parang dinali niya si Representative Chel Jokno na Akbayan Party List, kung saan sinasabi niya na lack of evidence nga daw itong paghihingi pa sa kanya ng subpoena, pati parang paghihingi pa ng protection kay Ramil Madriaga para nga mag-testify dito sa Kamara when in regards to the impeachment proceedings. Pero paglilinaw naman ng Kamara na dumadaan sila sa proseso at nasabi na rin naman ni Representative Jokno na ito daw ay dahilan para mapagtibay nga yung ebidensya, hindi para sabihin kulang, pero para lang mas mapagtibay at may additional nga talaga silang pieces of evidence against the Vice President.
Amy, if in case nagpadala ng response si VP Sara today, ano ang mangyayari sa timeline ng impeachment complaint?
If magpadala kasi ng reply si VP Sara, meron pa daw kasing 3 days na ibibigay din doon sa complainants para magkaroon din sila ng response to VP Sara. Pero hindi pa rin naman masisira totally yung sa hearings nila. Pero yun nga, yung proceedings din at kung kailan natin makikita si VP Sara, if in case nga mag-respond siya, dahil karapatan niya din naman daw ito, mas magiging mas mahaba lang kasi meron silang 3 days lagi na interval para nga magbigay ng response sa isa't isa. So that's between VP Sara and the complainants of her impeachment cases.
Wala bang press release or pronouncement sa kampo ni VP Sara if magpapadala sila? Because yung 10 calendar days supposedly na sinusunod ng House of Representatives, ika nga, based sa report mo rin, dapat kahapon. So technically, nag-lapse na ang count nila pero in-extend nila to today, di ba? So wala bang idea kung magpapadala ba ng reply o hindi?
Nung nakausap natin the other day si Representative Joel Chua with regards to this nga, inaasahan daw kasi nila na today ay magpapadala nga daw. So antabayanan natin kung magpapadala nga. Meron na din naman kasi tayong mga narinig from the side of VP Sara. Nakita na natin yung list ng lawyers niya for her defense nga dito sa kanyang impeachment cases. Meron na din siyang naging statement na inilabas nung Friday tungkol naman dito sa mga nagiging proceedings din ng Kamara na sinasabi niya isa daw itong fishing expedition. So ang yun nga nasabi naman nung ilang mga mambabatas dito no, expected pa rin naman na today talaga si VP Sara, lalo na dahil isang constitutional process nga, paulit-ulit na sinasabi na isang constitutional process nga itong impeachment.
Pero kung hindi siya magpadala ng kanyang reply, ang ibig sabihin nito mas mapapabilis yung proceedings ng House of Representatives, tama?
Technically, mas mapapabilis dahil hindi na nga kailangan din ng response from the complainants. Pero magtutuloy-tuloy din talaga yung proceedings nila regardless dahil nga ang sinasabi dito ni Representative Jervy Luistra naman na chairperson ng House Justice Committee, karapatan kasi ni VP Sara no, na magpakita at magbigay nga ng kanyang tugon dito nga sa mga reklamo laban sa kanya. Pero kung hindi naman siya magpakita, this is just technically a waiving of right from VP Sara. So yun lang naman, pero technically magtutuloy-tuloy pa rin yung process of impeachment and hindi naman totally parang masisira no, yung timeline din na siniset ng House Justice Committee kung hindi man magpakita si VP Sara dahil magtutuloy-tuloy pa rin yan, mahanapin pa rin nila yung probable causes, yung grounds for the impeachment of VP Sara dahil nga nakalusot na rin ito sa preliminaries ng House Justice Committee.
Amy, saan naman papasok sa procedure yung, kumbaga sabi nila, they're going to address the participation of the two lawyers na kina-question na maaring maging witness, no? Lawyers ni VP Sara sa kanyang impeachment complaint. One is Attorney Powa, no, na naging kasama rin niya sa Department of Education. So, saan papasok dun sa procedure na yon o sa proceedings ng impeachment na to, yung pag-check doon sa issue na yon sa mga lawyers ni VP Sara?
Actually, that, Angela, we have to confirm pa, no? Pero expected din kasi natin na magpakita na nga yung ilang members ng legal team, lalo na dito sa hearing ng House Justice Committee when it comes to probable causes and final grounds para nga din makita nila no, yung final na kinakailangan makapaloob dun sa impeachment article. So as much as possible, ay magpakita na nga rin talaga at magbigay ng kanilang panig no, at response si VP Sara mismo, maging yung kanyang defense team para kung sakali meron nga ditong mga nakalista no, sa recital of facts na maipalalagay nila sa final grounds for impeachment, hindi na masyadong magiging debate yan, lalo na pag tinaas na din sa upper chamber. No? So yan yung inaasahan natin. Pero we have to confirm kung kailan nga ba at anong proceedings talaga specifically magpapakita rin itong defense team ni VP Sara.
Maraming salamat sa iyong oras, Mobile Journal Amy Atienza reporting live from the House of Representatives. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning. You're still watching News and Views here on One News. Malacanang says the closure of the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or ICI, will not end the investigation into the multi-billion peso flood control scandal. The commission created by President Bongbong Marcos will cease operations on March 31 after submitting its findings to the Ombudsman and the Department of Justice. But Palace Press Officer Claire Castro says the probe will continue, noting that both agencies are still conducting preliminary investigations and may launch further inquiries if needed.
To help us understand the implications of the closure of the ICI, we're joined by Dr. Froilan Calilong, faculty member of the USC Department of Political Science. Good morning. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good morning, Jairo. Good morning, Angela. And good morning to all our viewers. Thank you for having me again.
Okay, this latest news na magsasara ang ICI doesn't really come to a shock. We kind of expected this, but ano ba magiging implications nito in terms of how the Marcos administration in general is handling this whole flood control mess?
Well, two things, no, Diego. I think one thing we need to understand here is has it really achieved its purpose? From the time that it was conceptualized to the time that it actually operationalized. And nagawa ba niya talaga yung kanyang mga
That's a question.
sabihin na nating layunin. This I believe is very, very important. Secondly, I think what the president should actually do is not just to shut down the ICI, but to actually formally recommend to the Congress and to make it also a priority bill measure on the part of this administration na magkaroon talaga tayo ng isang batas, no, na talagang mangangalaga dito sa mga katiwalian, particularly those that are referring to infrastructures like what we have seen in the flood control, yung mga farm to market roads, and we really need to actually have a legislative measure on that. Kasi itong ICI, let's face it, no, talagang nagkaroon sila ng problema dahil nga unang-una it was haphazardly created. The structure, the staffing, I think is problematic. The funding also is problematic. Kaya hindi talaga natin masisisi kung hindi talaga to nakapag-deliver, no? Kasi nga biglaan din yung pagka-create sa kanya, no? And I think some people are actually saying that this was more of an appeasement mechanism, no,
Yun.
para talaga
That's why I asked.
appease yung galit ng taong bayan, ano. Pero I think what we need to understand here also is that the ICI, yun nga, yung kanilang preliminary investigations, kailangan hindi yun masayang, kahit hindi mawala, maibigay talaga natin sa iba't ibang ahensya ng pamahalaan na magko-conduct din naman ng kanilang investigations.
Pero, wait,
go ahead,
tugtog lang. But I guess the question kasi that I really wanted to ask was, does it then reflect on the Marcos administration that hindi sila sincere from the start and that they created this just simply to, you said it, the exact words, to appease the people? Because there were a lot of questions from the start and pinanindigan ng administration ni PBBM, no, we're sincere. And all of a sudden, tama nga sinasabi ng tao, nagmadali ka lang just to appease the people.
Yeah, actually that's exactly the point, Trego, no, na sana talagang mas nailatag yung pinaka-foundation, mas nabigyan siya ng mas malawak na kapangyarihan, mas nakapili siguro tayo ng mas maayos na staffing pattern para talaga nakagawa tayo ng mas konkretong mga findings, no. And I really believe that since the time that the ICI was created and when Mayor Benji Magalong at nung isa-isa na sila naglalagasan at nawala, that's the time that I felt that there is some kind of an internal problem dito sa ICI. And maybe this men that were chosen by the president really felt na meron talagang mga hindi natumbok. So may mga investigation na sana nailatag ng mas maganda at mas maayos, pero medyo maaring may pinoprotektahan, may paglilihis na nangyari, merong hindi sila gustong tapakan. And I think this really complicated the matter because the very purpose why we created the ICI is for us to have a fact-finding mechanism to really, to really find out kung sino ba talaga at ano-ano yung punot dulo nitong napakalaking issue na to sa flood control. Pero hindi na-address Hindi na-address, walang masyadong konkretong mga kinahinatnan. At the same time, kung natitignan natin yung mga sinasabi nilang mga pagdinig na dapat ay gagawin in full public view, parang isang beses lang yata sila nakapag-live stream and after that wala na. So these things I think could have been better addressed if we really have proper mechanisms dito sa inilatag na to ng ICI.
Well, I agree with you that there are multiple factors that kumbaga doomed itong creation ng ICI nito. Not enough funding, di ba? Not enough authority, and more importantly, not enough political will. But can you name at least one or two kumbaga na ginawa ng ICI na sa tingin mo tama naman that they are going in the right direction? Meron ba?
Very difficult question. Actually, yung mga siguro yung mga field investigations, I think that's one. I think they did several ocular investigations, there's ocular inspections. They really went down the ground. I think that's really important for us to really understand. Ano ba rito yung ghost project, alin ba rito yung mga substandard projects. But I think that's just one part kasi of the equation. What is more important here is how they are going to solidify their commitment towards pursuing not just this initial findings, kung parang tignan natin ano ba talaga yung mas malalim na kapupuntahan nito. Sino-sino ba talaga yung mga tao na kailangan nating i-implicate dito. And dapat nagkaroon siya ng maayos na recommendatory mechanism, no, sa presidente, sa kahit siguro sa ibang ahensya ng pamahalaan like the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, no, para sana naipatawag man lang itong mga tao na to na involved. Because let's face it, no, the idea or the impression that is now being given to the public is that hindi talaga sincero yung gobyerno dito, no. At kapag wala yung sincerity, wala yung integrity, nandoon yung agam-agam na may pinagtatakpan, may paglilihis na nangyayari, meron tayong ayaw tamaan. And I think this is something that the ICI, kaya nga siya independent, no? If it was created to be really independent, then it could have been done with, or it could have been given greater autonomy, no, na wala talagang na masasabi nating hindi na ibigay sa kanya, no. Kaya nga dito makikita natin marami talaga naging kahinaan, and kung magtatapos man siya ngayon, siguro masasabi nating walang masyadong tangible naman na outcome or walang tangible result, no.
Well, sabi naman nila, to give credit, the ICI was able to produce results in short time when it was active. They conducted 32 hearings involving 36 witnesses, compiled more than 1,100 pages of documents, and issued 9 referrals recommending charges against 65 individuals. But then again, at the end of the day, nandun tayo sa pangako kasi before Christmas na merong big fish. Pero it's already, matatapos na yung first quarter of the year 2026. Meron bang big fish?
Yeah, there's absolutely none, and I think mangyayari nito is magsusona na naman tayo, no, several months from now. Maalala natin, it was in SONA 2024 when the president said that we have flood control already in place. It was SONA 2025 when he said that there was this big mess surrounding the flood control, and the scandal came out. And then right now we'll be having another SONA, and by then monsoon season na naman, balik na naman tayo doon sa ganong problema, sa ganong issue, and yet we're not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel. So I think kaya nga kung makikita natin, Diego, Angela, kapag may mga whistleblowers tayo patungkol dito sa flood control or any other corruption related incident, parang nawawala na ng relevance, lalong-lalo na sa taong bayan. Yes, initially may shock factor, pero afterwards it will just die out in thin air, primarily because alam natin na itong mga investigations na to, investigation left and right, wala naman talagang konkretong kinakahinatnan. And I think this is where the ICI really failed, because it doesn't have any kind of sabihin na nating authority na talagang seryoso at na medyo may pagka-decisive talaga. Kaya yun, medyo nakulangan talaga tayo doon sa naging resulta niya.
Doc, do you believe, kasi ang dami nagsasabi, na when this scandal broke out, yung sa flood control mess, people were saying it was more of aside from it being a battle against corruption, parang nagiging battle of PBBM versus the Dutertes. If you were on the Duterte side, whatever came out sa PBBM admin regarding the flood control mess, hindi credible. Ang nangyari pa nga nagturuan or naglabanan ng Congress and Senate. Kumbaga, iba ang version ng Senate, iba ang version ng Congress. Yung mga congressmen are saying, bakit kami lang, hindi senador? Ang senador, bakit kami lang, hindi yung congressman? I think this muddled up the whole process.
Yeah, that's very true. I totally agree with that. And yun nga, because from the very get-go, hindi talaga naging malinaw kung ano ba talaga yung motibo. Hindi talaga naging maliwanag kung paano ilalatag yung mga mechanisms para talaga hanapin yung katotohanan. Kaya along the way, nagsanga-sanga talaga siya, and doon tayo nagkaroon ng problema. And ako, I really believe, and I've said this in many different interviews, that for as long as meron talaga tayong mga tao na pinoproteksyonan at meron talaga tayong mga tao na gustong hindi madrag dito sa issue na to, meron at meron talagang paglilihis na mangyayari. At kahit gumawa man tayo ng napakaraming ICI, for as long as we really do not want kumbaga hindi natin kahit tumbukin yung katotohanan at yung mga tao na to na ayaw nating madamay dito sa napakalaking issue na to, talagang hindi siya magiging sapat. So bottom line, it's really about political will. It's all about the decisiveness, and it's not just about coming up with piecemeal measures like this just to appease the public, just to tell the people that we're doing something about it until such time that another issue will come in, until the next time that this will die out again. And after that, wala talagang konkretong nangyayari. So doon tayo nagkakaroon talaga ng problema.
Right, but who do you think were protected in this investigation?
Well, primarily, binanggit na nga natin yung mga tao na ayaw banggitin ng nakararami. Martin Romualdez was already mentioned. Even the president was actually mentioned by several other whistleblowers and witnesses. Pero hindi nila nadala doon yung investigation. Ayaw nilang dalhin doon yung investigation. And, that really created the presumption and the impression that, these people are coddling people. No, and that becomes the issue at hand kung bakit talaga yung findings niya mismo medyo questionable, 'di ba? Kasi nga kung talagang ang layunin natin dito mahanap talaga yung katotohanan, we should not be settling for this small fries, no. We should not be settling for this itong mga dilis at saka mga sapsap ika nga, no. Kailangan hanapin natin talaga yung mga malalaking isda because sila yung utak nito no. And for as long as hindi natin yun magagawa, hindi natin talaga malalaman kung anong katotohanan dahil ayaw ipaalam sa publiko at ayaw nilang malaman kung sino ba talaga yung may kagagawa nito, no. Even if the public already have may mga apprehensions na tayo, no? May mga kahit paano, may mga naiisip na tayo na sila. Ang kailangan lang ng gawin ng ICI at ng ibang investigating bodies is to prove those presuppositions, no? Na meron talaga silang involvement. Pero yun na hindi nila nagagawa.
So what should we do then? Should we go to Congress and form a constitutional body to fight corruption, or do we allocate the funds that could be used sa new constitutional body to strengthen a unit within the Ombudsman that will focus on infrastructure projects?
That is really quite I think a good measure, I would say, Sir Diego. But the problem kasi right now, especially with the administration, and I will not mince words with this, na kaya hindi talaga tayo makausad-usad primarily is because maraming tao mismo na nasa gobyerno, sila mismo ay maaring nakinabang. Sila mismo ay merong mga involvement dito, and they are the ones who possess the power to create, to legislate. They are the ones who are vested with the power and the authority to actualize and to operationalize mechanisms para hanapin talaga yung perpetrators. But how will they be moved towards this realization, and how will they be functioning towards this the fulfillment of this kung sila mismo involved nga rito, no? So kumbaga, we could always put measures, we could always put up systems in place, but at the end of the day, it's really the willpower and the political sabihin na natin yung kakayahan talaga natin na mag-enforce nung talagang nararapat at naaayon. Kung wala yon, baliwala itong mga gagawin natin. But those are very good first steps, no? Especially ako personally, I really would want to have a fully legislated, properly functioning infrastructure commission that will serve really as not just a watchdog, no? Hindi lang recommendatory, pero maganda kung meron silang quasi-judicial powers right away para talaga mas magkaroon ng takot yung mga contractors and other unscrupulous officials that will be involved in transactions like this.
That's true. Kasi ang nangyari sa ICI, may subpoena power sila pero walang contempt. So kahit ipasubpoena mo, hindi dumating, wala silang magagawa.
Wala silang magagawa.
Yes.
Yeah,
Pero
exactly.
dun sa question po ni Diego kanina, meron naman kasing pinupush ngayon na both lower and upper houses ng batas that will give ICI power. Sa Senate, they call it Independent People's Commission. Sa Congress, Independent Commission Against Infrastructure Corruption. So let's see kung paano uusad yung batas na yan. 'Di ba? But for the meantime, do you think that etong creation ng ICI na magsasara na by March 31 will also add doon sa trust rating ng PBBM administration? Mag-add siya sa pagbagsak ng trust rating?
Yeah, definitely it will have an impact, especially because, number one, ang pinanghawakan kasi rito ng taong bayan ay yung pinangako ng ating Pangulo, no, na meron at meron talaga tayong mapapanagot nung Pasko. Inantay natin yun, ano? Mas inantay pa nga yata natin yung kaysa sa mga regalo na gusto nating matanggap during that time. Pero hindi nangyari. And the ICI is an instrumental factor to that. So the failure to prosecute and to imprison people that are in the line of this flood control scandal directly resonates to the failure also of the ICI to perform their function. And again, overall, syempre merong implication ito doon sa trust and satisfaction ng taong bayan dito sa Pangulo, na parang lalabas nga na ginawa lang naman yan dahil nga para lang masabi na may ginagawa, para masabi na para hindi mag-revolution yung taong bayan, hindi mag-escalate yung galit natin. And then after what, nung na-appease na, wala na. And then tignan natin ngayon yung timing, no, nung kung kailan siya mawawala, no, March 31, and of course right now meron tayong malaking issue na kinakaharap, the oil price crisis, the problem in the Middle East. I think this could be an opportune time. Maaaring iniisip ng Pangulo, no, ng ating pamahalaan na pwede na nating i-divert yung attention kasi masyado ng marami ng issue na kinakaharap. Pwede na nating tapusin tong ICI kasi baka lalo pang lalo pang ma-complicate. So I think these are some of the considerations, but at the end of the day, I think really the ICI failed to really failed to deliver. That's my verdict with the ICI.
Oo, kumbaga, pero tingnan natin kasi malapit na rin naman ang saglit lang naman ang tag-init. Mamaya tag-ulan na naman, so ma-empower na naman yung mga tao magalit dahil makikita na naman nila yung baha all over the Philippines. But Professor, can you also see this creation of ICI and then of course yung the end of this commission at saka of course yung pag-push ng ombudsman to file cases against people who are involved in this mess, ay nagpapakita din ng kumbaga crisis sa justice legal system natin na talagang mabagal at hindi talaga nararapat yung nangyayari ngayon?
Yeah, actually, I totally agree with that, Angela. No, and really, this is what I'm seeing. That's why even the public perception regarding the judicial process, especially with high stakes criminality like this, plunder and graft and corruption, talagang mababa yung kumpiyansa ng ating mga kababayan na makapagpanagot tayo, lalo na ng mga malalaking isda. Because alam natin that in a country like the Philippines na mas pinababagal ang pag-usad ng hustisya, lalong-lalo na kung malalaking tao yung involved, no? Dahil nandito pumapasok yung pera, yung impluwensya, yung kanilang network, yung kanilang mga tao na pwedeng maging padrino and all. So it really this particular issue of the flood control is a systemic manifestation of how our justice system actually is not only slow, but it's actually problematic many times. And I think what complicates the matter right now is the fact na yun nga, no, yung mga tao na involved dapat nung sa paglalabas ng hustisya, maaaring kuminsan nahihirapan din sila na gawin ito, no, dahil nga may mga tao talaga na talagang pumipigil at humaharang at maaaring ito yung nagpapabagal talaga dun sa dispensation ng justice.
Oh, tsaka nangyayari at the end of the day, kung naiiba yung pag naiba na yung pangulo, naiiba na rin kung sino yung mga nakukulong. Napapalaya yung mga nakulong at yung mga hindi nakulong ipapakulong naman because hindi kaalyado. Ganun nangyayari. It's a cycle here in the Philippines.
Yeah, it's really a cycle. Until the next corruption scandal comes.
Yeah.
Ganun lang yun eh. It's always like that. Kaya talagang mahirap for as long as the processes and the people, the personalities are deeply involved as well dito sa mga issue na kagaya nito.
Alright, maraming salamat as always sa iyong oras, Dr. Froilan Calilong, faculty member of the UST Department of Political Science.
In other news, more than 340 Filipinos, including workers and children, have safely returned home from the Middle East as repatriation efforts continue. Here's the report.
The second government-chartered flight carrying Filipinos from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain safely arrived in the country on Sunday. On board were 343 Filipinos, including 328 overseas Filipino workers and 13 children. They were welcomed by personnel from the Department of Migrant Workers and other government agencies. Financial assistance will be provided to returning OFWs, and the government will cover transportation and hotel accommodations for those traveling back to their provinces. The DMW is coordinating with the Department of Education to assist children returning with their OFW parents.
Well, from the DMW OWA side, we provide the necessary financial assistance, no? So that the parents, OFW parents, can somehow still step the tide themselves over, which will directly benefit yung kanilang mga anak. Dun sa health and medical and social work side, the DSWD perhaps would know, but if I may care to also ask the good USEC kung tulong sa mga children. Yung mga school age, grade school, of course, you're right. We are coordinated with Sexani and the DepEd.
Among the passengers was a Filipina babysitter from Riyadh who said that aside from the war, she also experienced abuse from her employers. She was the last passenger to board the government's chartered flight.
Mahirap po kasi muntik na po kami maripe, yung isang kasama ko lang yung kaya nagpa-rescue agad po ng OWA. Opo. Mahirap po doon. Hindi na po kami babalik doon sa lugar na yun. Malapit lang sa amin pero yung mga lahi nila ba, pangit talaga. Takot po kasi ikaw ba naman muntik na marip, ma'am.
Meanwhile, 50 Filipinos from Kuwait have already crossed into Riyadh and are expected to return to the Philippines in the coming days. The DMW also reported another Filipino in the United Arab Emirates who sustained minor injuries, but unlike the earlier two cases, the worker chose to remain in the country.
Also in the UAE, I learned about this nung nandun ako. But still, minor injuries, relatively minor injuries na tamo nung kababayan natin sa UAE. So far, we have 2 UAE and 1 in Kuwait. In fact, the one in UAE has chosen to stay. Kasi nga minor pa, may trabaho pa siya eh. So he has chosen to stay.
In total, more than 1,000 OFWs from the Middle East have been repatriated to the Philippines through the efforts of the DMW and OWA.
Well, meron pa mga nakaabang na succeeding flights. So there will just be an appropriate announcement for each. No? But rest assured, there will be chartered flights to be mounted.
U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened more strikes on Iran's Karg Island, a key oil export hub, as the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran enters its third week. Trump also urged allied countries to deploy warships to secure the Strait of Hormuz, a vital passageway where about 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes. Iran, meanwhile, vowed retaliation and reportedly launched missile and drone attacks targeting Israel and several U.S. bases in the region. The escalating conflict is already shaking global energy markets. Crude oil prices jumped about 3% on Sunday night, climbing to around $100 per barrel, the highest level since the Russia-Ukraine war. The spike is also pushing up jet fuel prices and global transport costs, with governments and industries bracing for possible inflationary pressures and higher fuel prices in the coming days.
Don't go away because we're not done yet. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching News and Views here on One News. And for more updates from the upper chambers, let's talk to mobile journalist Merimon Reyes. Merimon, ano ang latest?
Angela, Diego, good morning. Ang Committee on Health and Demography dito sa Senado nabuksan sa pagdinig nito yung tungkol sa regulation ng vape or tsaka ng HTPs, ito yung heated tobacco product, nabuksan kasi ulit sa usapan ng DOH, maging ng mga doktor mula sa ilang mga ospital, civil society groups na concerned dito is yung mga kabataan, especially sa junior high school daw, around 13 years old, 14 years old, karamihan sa mga ito nahihikayat daw sa paggamit ng vape or yung pag-try ng vape dahil sa flavors, yung designs daw, yung decorations, yung packaging mismo ng vape products, and yung mga offers din daw, especially online, na madaling access ang makukuha, free shipping, delivery daw ang mangyayari para sa kabataan. And ang concern nila dito is yung early use nito na may lead sa issues on health, especially sinasabi nga na popcorn lungs, plus concerning din daw dito yung mga second-hand smokers kasi sigarilyo man daw yan or vape products or other HTPs, basta makasingot lang daw nito, very prone at delikado raw ang kahit na sino tao, especially yung mga merong comorbidities na maaaring maapektuhan kapag ka na-expose dito. Pagdating naman sa Basic Education Committee, nais kasing palawigin ng komite itong Anti-Bullying Act. Ang na-raise dito na recommendations or suggestions ni Senator Erwin Tulfo, kapag dating daw sa curriculum, sa good manners and right conduct, maganda daw magpasok ng age-appropriate na lessons on anti-bullying. Plus, para raw sa security, kasi ang naging concern dito ni na Senator Raffy Tulfo is maraming cases na may unfortunately namamatay dahil daw sa case of bullying. Yung mental health, they are put at stake. So para raw masiguro yung safety ng mga estudyante sa loob, lalong-lalo na sa loob daw ng paaralan, kung kulang daw sa security guards, pwede raw magkaroon ng MOA ang eskwelahan sa DILG para meron daw mga rumorondang security officers sa paligid ng eskwelahan. Balik sa inyo.
Marymon, ang akin lang, gusto ko itanong tungkol doon sa Blue Ribbon Committee report, no, on flood control hearing ni Senator Panfilo Lacson, their head, ay sabi ko konti pa lang yung pumipirma. If I'm not mistaken, si Senator Risa Ontiveros, sino pa ba? Si Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Ano mangyayari doon?
Oo, kailangan kasi dito yung majority ng signatures. 5 pa lang. Actually, nung Tuesday, nung nag-privilege speech si Senator Ping, nasabi niya una isa pa lang, si Senator Bam Aquino. Pero around Thursday, naging 5 na. So, Senator Bam, Senator Kiko, Senator Risa, si Senator Ping. So, apat yung narinig natin na mga pumirma na. And ang kailangan kasi dito majority bago siya maisalang sa plenary floor. Ang concern din dito ni Senator Ping kasi, yung mga questions daw o amendments, yung gustong baguhin sa wordings or may other related pa na queries tungkol nga sa nilalaman ng BRC report, pwede naman daw yun isalang sa session. Yun nga lang, isa pang pwedeng maging room kaya medyo matagal yung pagpirma is number 1, baka may pag-aalinlangan daw dahil may mga nabanggit nga ditong pangalan ng kapwa nila senador, or number 2, dahil around 400 pages yung kapal nung Blue Ribbon Committee report, though partial report pa lang ito. Kaya baka raw nagtitake ng time yung ilang mga senador na isa-isahin yung mga pahina dito. But still, pwede naman daw yun gawin na magbasahin ito, and then kung may other questions daw, or interpellations or amendments, pwede naman daw yun gawin sa session floor. Ang sabi ni Senator Ping, kung sakaling mangyari yun, pwede magpatawag daw ng pagdinig ang Blue Ribbon tungkol again sa maanumalyang flood control projects, at doon nila pwedeng tignan kung okay na ba yun o kung kakailanganin pa ng sunod na pagdinig or ibang matters na ang isasalang sa Blue Ribbon.
Meron ba doon, do we have information doon sa Blue Ribbon Committee report na to ni Senator Ping Lacson kung may mention ba of filing charges against the senators involved, like sila Senator Jinggoy Estrada, Senator Chis Escudero, and Senator Joel Villanueva? That's why iniisip natin baka kaya may reservation yung ibang mga senador na pumirma, lalo na kung kaalyado nila.
Angela, yan yung actually isang reason kaya nagkaroon nung a month ago, maraming nangyari, especially from the minority bloc, naglabas na sila ng minority report. May mga senador dito na nag-express ng kanilang concern sa language use na ginamit doon sa partial report ng Blue Ribbon. Kaya dito pinalitan ni Senate President Pro Tempore Ping Lacson yung language, kasi ang unang nakalagay is yung recommendation ng charges, pero pag in layman's term daw kasi, lumalabas dito, tumutunog dito, meron ng nabibigay na may hatol na raw siya sa korte, which is hindi siya sakop ng Senado. So ang nilagay nila doon, ang pinalit nila, to undergo further investigation or preliminary investigation. And karamihan naman daw sa mga case na nilagay dito, especially doon sa mga senador o mga kongresista, ay ongoing naman daw sa ombudsman o kaya naman sa DOJ. So yun yung iniiwasan nila. Yun yung na-raise din ni Blue Ribbon Vice Chair Senator Erwin Tulfo, yung language use. So medyo iniba nila, tinwik nila para hindi siya magtunog na may verdict na, which is beyond the scope of the Senate.
Kamusta naman yung paghihiram ni Senator Bato de la Rosa ng Senate Mansion sa Baguio? May report na tayo na rejected yung kanyang request. Tama ba yon?
Oo, actually ang nasabi nga ni Senate President Tito Soto, executive letter daw or communication talaga yon. Kaya medyo nagulat siya na napagbigay alam man agad ang media. Pero
Oo.
ang sabi naman ni Secretary General Mendoza, inform daw nila si Senator Bato na may ongoing repairs na gagawin doon sa Senate Mansion sa Baguio. Dapat daw kasi ang request ni Senator Bato, gagamitin daw yon from March 26 to March 29 for the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces Cup 2026. So sa Baguio yon. So yung pamilya niya doon daw mag-reside muna. Though walang mention kung si Senator Bato mismo, which was Chief of Police during his time, kung pupunta rin siya. Pero as of now, denied daw or rejected itong request ni Senator Bato.
Di pa ba siya papasok?
Naku, wala pa. Even yung mga senador dito, kung sino yung usual face na nakikita natin, sila pa rin. Pero yung opisina ni Senator Bato, tuloy-tuloy pa rin naman yung operations nito. And yan yung isa sa mga inaantabayanan natin. Kasi sa pagrolyo naman ng Senate Ethics Committee, medyo may dulo yung ethics complaint filed against Senator Bato de la Rosa, yung sa continuing absence niya. Kaya maaari ang nasabi kasi dito ni Ethics Chairman Senator J.V. Ejercito, first in, first out eh. So medyo hihintayin pa ng karamihan yung tungkol naman kay Senator Bato. And all the other talks related to it, kasama na dyan yung pagsuspend muna ng sahod hanggat hindi pumapasok sa Senado itong senador.
Okay.
Alright, thank you for that, mobile journalist Merimon Reyes.
In other news, typewriters may seem like relics of the past, but in Quiapo, one craftsman is keeping these vintage machines alive, restoring them piece by piece for collectors and customers from around the world. For details, in this report by Mobile Journal, Fatima Badurya.
May typewriter din ba kayo mula kay lolo o lola na hindi na gumagana? May nag-aayos pa niyan dito sa Quiapo, Maynila. Within Comandante Street in Quiapo, Manila stands one of the last typewriter shops in the country. This is the work of Gerald de la Cruz. While his humble shop is quiet, his business remains very much alive. Over the years, restoring typewriters have become Gerald's expertise and led him to earning the trust of his customer base, something he takes pride in. Gerald says vintage collectors often visit or buy from him online.
Bihira na talagang gumagawa nito. Saka wala naman sa school kasi ito eh. Yung ba, sa vocational, wala. Ano lang to, matututo ka by experience lang.
These typewriters may be old, but antiquity is precisely what makes them more valuable. This has drawn Gerald to collect rare typewriters. Among his collection are models that type in cursive, Japanese, and even Arabic. According to him, the oldest model he has restored to good working condition is a typewriter from 1886, which came from a customer in the United States. His most expensive work was even priced at 100,000 pesos for a rare typewriter from 1915.
Mas masalimuot gawin eh. Maraming iba-iba yung posisyon. Hindi kagaya ng mga moderno ngayon, mga 80s na pataas. Parang mga simple na lang. Hindi kagaya ng mga luma talaga. May maraming sekreto. Saka makakapal yung pesa, kaya ang tibay.
Because it can be difficult to find replacement for typewriter parts, Gerald sources from junk. Some people may say that typewriters are seeing its last days, but Gerald continues to persevere in his life's work and has no plans to pursue other jobs.
Ay, minsan may nagsabi, may bumibili pa ba yan? Minsan napigan ako, sabi ko, pag namatay ka, gagamitin yung typewriter sa pangalan mo eh. Hanggang ngayon naman, mga funeraria, yung iba, typewriter pa rin. Yung parang inaalipos na pa yung luma na yan, high-tech na ngayon, di ba? Eh, yung iba kasi ganung tao, hindi nila appreciate yung mga luma.
As he revitalizes typewriters, these old machines also give life to his family. Gerald says this is where his motivation comes from.
Nakakabuhay, saka may nag-aaral pang dalawa eh. 3 pala yung graduate na eh. Itong talagang bubuhay ng pamilya ko.
Kapatid Fatima Badurya, we are One News.
Here are the latest updates from the UAAP Season 88 Volleyball Tournament. The Adamson Lady Falcons swept the UP Fighting Maroons to regain momentum and close round 1 on a high note. Felicity Sagaysay led Adamson with 20 excellent sets and 5 points, helping the team improve to 4-3 and create a 3-way tie for third place with Far Eastern University and University of Santo Tomas. Meanwhile, the DLSU Lady Spikers defeated defending champion NU in 4 sets, finishing round 1 unbeaten at 7-0. Amy Provido contributed 12 points and 9 excellent digs for the Lady Spikers. And the quote for today, some days are heavy, but even the quiet ones move your life forward. And that wraps up today's episode of News and Views.
Join us again tomorrow. I'm Angela Lagunzad Castro.
And I'm Angelo Castro III, kapatid, we are One News.
All sides, all the time.